Hi everybody. Here we are at our first mini lecture for the spring semester for Gen Bio 2. So please make sure that you have something to take notes with. You should have a dedicated notebook for this course so that you can keep all your study materials together, organized and in one place. This will be really helpful when you need to come to office hours or at live study sessions to have all your notes on hand. I'm not a passive teacher, even in a virtual world, so you cannot be a passive learner. This means that I'm not just expecting to pour information onto you and you can't expect to just sit there and receive it. You have to participate in your learning journey, and the first step of that is to take notes, okay? So if you don't have something to take notes with, please pause the video and go get your notebook and something to write with, and I'll be right here. Okay, so let's look at the scientific process. The process of science is an important tool that helps scientists make statements and discoveries based on factual evidence. In biology, which is part of the natural sciences, we are exploring the world we live in, the physical world, by looking closely at the phenomena and processes that surround us at the macro level, or the level that's visible with our eyes, and at the micro level, which is the level that we need microscopes or special tools in order to see. So invisible to the naked eye, but visible with technology. As such, science and biology are restricted to natural explanations of phenomena, not supernatural explanations. In science, we do not believe, we hypothesize or we determine based on factual evidence. We use scientific reasoning to make a case for or against an explanation of a phenomenon. My Bio 251 students will tell you I don't use statements like I guess or I feel in my class, and I always discourage that kind of language when we're having scientific discussions. We should use the terms hypothesize. We hypothesize, or I observe. This is important to keep scientific facts separate from personal feelings and spiritual beliefs. I think right now more than ever, we are learning that science actually doesn't care at all about our feelings, because COVID-19 has us all in our feelings, and yet it's continuing to devastate our population, right? We still have to make, at the end of the day, despite how we feel, we have to make decisions, and decisions are being made based on the actual science. So there are two types of scientific reasoning that helps us to keep our discussions and our observations scientific. They're inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. And hopefully you've heard these terms before, even if you didn't quite understand what they meant. In inductive reasoning, we use observations to make a conclusion. Like, I click the light switch, the light doesn't come on, therefore the light bulb must be out. In deductive reasoning, we use a general law or a principle to predict an outcome. Like, I have a fever and a chill. I know this is an effect of my immune system, therefore I'm probably getting the flu. Sometimes we can combine the two, and inductive reasoning can become the principle for deductive reasoning. So let's walk through the example of this slide together. We'll start off with inductive reasoning, which uses a number of observations to draw a conclusion. All right, so here our observations are: members of a species are not all the same, individuals compete for resources, and species are generally adapted to their environment. This makes me think about the pocket mouse experiment we did in genetics over fall 2. The conclusion is individuals most adapted to their environment are more likely to survive and pass their traits to the next generation. See, we made those conclusions based on these three observations. But we can take it a step further, and we can take this conclusion that individuals most adapted to their environment are more likely to survive, and we can use that as the general principle for our deductive reasoning. So there we start with that, and then we can predict the results that if the average temperature in an ecosystem increases due to climate change, individuals better adapted to warmer temperatures will outcompete those that are not. So you see, we applied the principle that we observed in the inductive reasoning, is that organisms most adapted to their environment are more likely to survive. And we used deductive reasoning to say, so if the environment changes, organisms most adapted to the environment are more likely to survive. Okay, so just to keep those I'll try it throughout the semester to be clear when we're using inductive versus deductive reasoning. But just to be clear, inductive reasoning, all you're just starting with the set of observations and you're using that to draw a conclusion. With deductive reasoning, you're going to make a prediction based on a general principle, okay? As a scientist, we generally avoid declaring something is true. So what is true? What's truth? Well, we know that knowledge changes, and that is about the only thing that is true. Okay, so especially as we get more access to what we can do and what we can learn through the continued development of technology, something that was considered true in the past may no longer be considered true, right? It may be declared false. So for instance, let's take the flat earth hypothesis. Okay, so at the time, based on the observations that scientists could make back in early manhood and the limitations of exploration, there was no long distance travel, there were no telescopes, we didn't have satellites that could take a picture from space and show it back to us. So it seemed perfectly reasonable to declare, when I look, I see a line and nothing beyond that. Therefore, the earth is flat. However, as modes of long distance travel increased and humans learned more about light refraction and the development of the field of physics, that fact that the earth was flat was disproven. And now we know that the earth is round. So, so we can just get around that by not ever trying to declare something is true. We can just say what we observe. And so one of my pet peeves with non-scientists is the misuse of the term theory. Somebody always has a theory about something. People have a theory about how COVID came to be. They have a theory about who shot Tupac, whatever. But generally, people are confusing the term theory with the term hypothesis. So it is important for us to get this right in class, as one of my personal missions to get people to stop saying that and using that term incorrectly, because it means something to scientists. When you say that something is a theory, that means something, but that's not the meaning being used by people who are using that term for the most part. So what is the difference between a hypothesis and a theory? A hypothesis is a suggested explanation for a phenomenon, for a thing that happened that you have observed. Okay, so based on an observation or a series of observations, you would like to propose an explanation. And that proposal must be testable. You have to be able to test it. That's a hypothesis. A theory is a hypothesis that has been verified by different people in different places under different conditions, all coming to the same conclusion. So a theory provides an explanation for a phenomenon. It is an answer to a hypothesis, okay? So you can, we can hypothesize that if people can get vaccinated for COVID, the COVID infection rates will go down. That's a hypothesis. Now that vaccinations are happening, we can say that we have a theory that the more people that are vaccinated, the lower the COVID infection rates will go. Right? There will be evidence, and the hypothesis will be verified. So then we can state that as a theory, okay? So just remember, a hypothesis is a suggested explanation that's testable. Think of it as a proposal. And then a theory is a proposal that has been verified. So not only have you proposed it through your hypothesis, you've done the testing to verify that it is, in fact, a verifiable explanation, okay? So try to keep that. We'll use the language hypothesis a lot, and we will discuss some theories during the course of the Okay, so keeping what we've now learned about hypotheses in mind, let's talk now about the scientific method, which should be at least familiar to everyone. This is the tool that we use to work the process of science. Okay, so the scientific method is a series of well-defined steps that start with the hypotheses and lead to an answer. Okay, We often think of the hypotheses as kind of a linear map, like first step and last step, but that's not always the case. What is absolutely important is that you first gather your observations. What is the evidence, right? Put that all together, and then from that, ask a question, right? So based on these observations, I would like to know blank. Use that question to form your hypotheses. You can have multiple hypotheses that would address a single question. And then from that hypothesis or those hypotheses, you want to make predictions, right? If this hypothesis is true, then the results will look like this. Then you'll do the experiments to test the prediction and analyze those results. At the end of the day, we want to say whether our hypothesis is supported or not supported, or we accept the hypothesis or we don't. Our hypothesis is never true or false for the reasons that I just discussed about things being true or false. So we can prove or disprove our hypothesis. We can accept or not accept our hypothesis. We can support or not support our hypothesis. We can refute a hypothesis, but we cannot. A hypothesis is never true or false. So again, the scientific method, although presented as a linear, why don't I use the pointer and not my finger? Although presented as a linear set of steps, it's really not. So perhaps you make once you make your observations and you ask a question, you make your hypotheses and you make your prediction and realize that your prediction actually includes other hypotheses. So then you might loop back around and add more hypotheses to your experiment, right? And then based on your results, even if your hypothesis is supported, or maybe it's partially supported, you might need to refine your hypothesis or add another hypothesis. If it's not supported, you certainly want to adjust it and redo your experimentation, right? Revise your predictions and retest. So don't think of the scientific method as first to last. This is the thing, the thing I love the most about science is that each answer forms a new question. So it's a never-ending loop of asking questions, finding answers that lead to more questions, right? This is how research has gone on from time to time. All right, so that will conclude our discussion of the scientific process. So after you've watched this lecture, you'll go on to do a little practice and then an assessment, which is in Google Drive for this, okay? So, all right, well, I hope this has been helpful and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.